All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are so glad to be here with all of you. We're really excited to be celebrating Mia tonight. Mia has been here in service and support of so many other poets and authors, and so we really love when we get to celebrate somebody who is just like a really good part of the literary community. This book tonight is beautiful. It's called The Space Between Men. For folks who don't know Mia uses they, them pronouns. Mia is a poet, popular educator, and cultural historian from Charlotte, North Carolina. Their work, twice nominated for the Pushcart Prize, has been featured by the Slowdown, the Shade Journal, Palette Poetry, the Offing, the Minnesota Review, Homology Lit, NarrativeNortheast, and others. Willis has earned fellowships from Cave Canem, La Maison Baldwin, The Watering Hole, Lambda Literary, and Chashama's ChaNorth. A two-time Best of the Net nominee, they're the author of Monster House, which came out in 2019, the 2018 winner of Cave Canem's Toy Derricotte and Cornelius Eady Chapbook Prize. And the book we are celebrating tonight, The Space Between Men, is hot off the presses, just out this week. So we are the first place that gets to help Mia send this book into the world before they go on a nationwide tour, which is really exciting. They're joined tonight by Maya Williams. Maya Williams uses AM, they, them, or she, her pronouns. Maya is a religious, Black, multiracial, non-binary suicide survivor who is currently an Ashley Bryan Fellow and was selected as the 7th Poet Laureate of Portland, Maine for July 2021 to July 2024 term. Maya's debut poetry collection, Judas and Suicide, is available through Game Over Books. Your second poetry collection, Refused a Second Date, is available now from Harbor Editions. Maya's third poetry collection, a chapbook, What's So Wrong with a Pity Party Anyway, is available now. Maya's collections are a finalist of a New England Book Award, a finalist of a Maine Literary Award, and a winner of a Garden Party Collective's Chapbook contest, respectively. And you can pick up some of Maya's books here as well. So we're very honored to have you here to be in conversation with Mia, and we're very glad to have all of you who are with us physically in this space and all of y'all who are watching online. So we're going to have an opportunity for questions, both for our folks online and for all of y'all here. But first, we're going to kick it over to Maya. We're going to get into some poems, some conversation, and I know it's going to be a lovely night. So put your hands together for our poetry.
Yay. Oh my goodness gracious me. Hello. Thank you all so much for being here with me on this chilly January evening with this book that feels like an impossible reality to be talking about in the present tense alongside of it. What to say about it? I'm going to try something different tonight. Most people who know me as a spoken word poet, know me as a performer, and this is my first time like reading, right? Which for those of you who like do know the difference, and there is a difference, like you definitely have to pace yourself differently through the material. So I'm going to introduce the book. I'm going to introduce the first poem, and then I'm just going to read some poems if that rocks with y'all. And then Maya has a couple questions for me. So let me start by saying that this book is my attempt to describe the indescribable. This book was my attempt to describe all the moments of joy, all the moments of anguish that I was feeling, largely between, I would say, 2017. Well, no, that's not true. I should say 2012 through about 2019, 2020, and 2021. And it was my attempt to write into spaces that maybe don't have their own language yet, or spaces that are eager to be articulated through language. And as an archaeologist, I know that spaces are defined by what's in them. You have to describe the thing that is inside of a space in order to really properly connect to it. And also, a lot of the spaces that I am connected to as a Black, queer Southerner are places that are not prioritized by the dominant culture, places that, you know, the dominant culture just gets a little wrong, right? The tint is a little off balance. And so This book is about finding one's own space, making one's own space, and being able to articulate one's own space. Each of the sections are named for a different step in language acquisition. So the idea that these are the sequential things that you need to go through in order to successfully acquire a language. The first poem in this book, we're gonna begin at the beginning. The first poem in this book is a kwansaba. A kwansaba is a newly canonical Black poetry form, created actually in 1995, which is my birth year. Shout out to the 90s babies. Created in 1995. It's a 7-line poem. No word is longer than 7 letters. It's an African-American praise poem, and it was created by Eugene B. Redmond. This poem is called The Giant's Causeway. It's a kwansaba for my right hand. I believe in God the way right hand does not think before it claps. My faith be an open palm, spread out wide and yet still right here, still clement, still trying to say her own name right, still praying for the bravery to call herself a deity too. 7 lines, yeah. 7 lines. That's hard. I wrote a lot of them for this book, and
they're so good.
That was near the end, actually, that I was writing. I am an archaeologist. I have a background in archaeology, and so naturally I'm always poking around in the material culture of language. This is a descriptive grammar about gender. A. Boy, B-O-Y, and boy, B-O-I, are homophones, distinguishable only by their context. Example, police officer to my father. Where are you coming from, boy? Example, lover's hand to my cheek. Where are you coming from, boy? B, the sequence of sounds trans is both a prefix and adjective that appears before the word it describes. Example, the Swahili name for the transatlantic slave trade is the Maafa, the catastrophe. Example, there is no Swahili word for transgender. There was no need to name the sources of the salt in the seawater before the catastrophe. C, femme, F-E-M-M-E, and femme, F-E-M, are homophones, distinguishable only by their context. Example, diamonds are a femme's best friend. Example, my femme is a home for the bloodiest hands. D, lexical semantics demonstrate that body and gender are historically synonymous. Example, this is my body, which is broken for you. Example, take this gender in remembrance of me. Yeah, and also like snap, yeah, like feel free to snap, because it's awkward if like I'm just reading the poems and then y'all are staring at me.
We're staring at you in silence.
It's beautiful.
And if you want to be in silence, that's fine.
Oh no, it's beautiful.
But still, like
if I wanted to go back to like speaking and having people stare at me glass-eyed, I would go back to the classroom. I'd be like, you all are. You don't have to teach it like we don't have to treat it like that. We don't have to treat it like that. This next poem is called Chosen Given, and it came out of a circumstance in which someone asked me if, like, I am somebody who identifies as gender expansive, why I haven't chosen another name, why I decided not to choose another name. And that made me a little angry, so I wrote this. Chosen Given. White folks make no promises with their names. Can't understand why I refuse to call Mia dead while it is still warm. Why I won't turn this covenant tombstone, won't choke this song silent. The mark of a colonizer is a short memory, one that erases history, rarely remembers what the people called themselves, only what the land was christened after baptism in their blood, forgets that killing only binds ghosts to the ground they die on. So I could not leave my name if I wanted to. Mia is the gift of a feminine body belonging to itself. First, only. It is barbarians gritting their teeth against the settlement. the artifact of mine that will be buried when it is time, or it will not be buried at all. Also, shout out to my mom. My mom's here. Also, shout out to my dad. My dad's not here, but both of shout out to my parents for great name. Excellent name. It looks really good on the cover of a book.
Yeah, it does.
So shout out to you all. I was experimenting with erasure while I was writing this book, and there is an erasure in this book that is told in 3 parts. So I'm going to read each of those parts if that sounds good to y'all. The first of those parts is called All the Other Planets Probe 1, an elegy for retrograde. Mercury. I bookmark it, try not to look away, 22. From prograde to retrograde to inertia, this is honest living. Venus. I bookmark it, rapist asks victim for second date, 18. My able horoscope reads like possession, deletes his number, stays friends on Facebook, lets our black hole slowly expand. We're in prograde and retrograde at the same time. Mars. I bookmark it, ghost caught on camera at bar, 21. Levitates without leaving. This time we break. No bar stool bones. Jupiter. I bookmark it, Tuesdays with no goddamn caffeine, 20. We used to stain our lips with coffee grounds and silent supplication. Saturn. Like my rings are not retrograding in all the pictures. My browser immediately gains 13 shortcuts to the Big Bang. Uranus. When the sun sets on Earth, it does not disappear from the sky. I bookmark them both, things that live only in retrograde, 21. Laughter progrades out, and for a moment we are both featureless infinity, Neptune. I bookmark it, death did not find us, 23. As everything else, remember that a name has never been a title, that none of us are God enough to survive. Yeah. We're just moving and grooving. Are y'all feeling this? I'm feeling this. So I have to give a shout out to the Randolph College MFA program, because Maya also is a Randolph alum, but also because this next poem that I'm going to read, I edited under the tutelage of the incredibly brilliant Angel Nafis.
Yes.
So I have to give all the love and appreciation to Angel wherever she is for giving me the gift of unlocking this poem. I also have to thank the incomparable Dinez Smith because I wrote this poem while studying under them at the 2019 Lambda Literary Writers Retreat. This poem is called Ideal Bounds. It has 3 epigraphs. I am not a man, but a cloud in trousers, Vladimir Mayakovsky. Say it with your whole black mouth, Dinez Smith. Life and death appeared to me ideal bounds, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. Folks Frankenstein my speech, graft calm sentences onto anchorated torso, move into my mouth and immediately reupholster my tongue. Draw a chart of my imagined semantic anatomy. Tell me what I must mean when I say, and maybe this is why everyone hates millennials. A generation stitching together scavenged syntax by candlelight, using their teeth to punctuate dirty suture threads, robbing graves to call themselves creators, stopping only to listen for the sound of the angels, I mean the mob, over the snuff film screams, and so they are surprised when the still living grammar shakes off rigor, reaches for the soft throat, an honest question, a bone saw, the deadliest antithesis, and maybe the monster's sin is wanting to be translated exactly or not at all, or that the cacophony of pitchfork lexicon gives him a fucking headache, and so he writes himself into a book where the words make the worlds and not the other way around. When did you first commend your spirit into the hands of misunderstanding? Which psalm taught you to read this passionate assuredness as argument? And maybe this is proof that resurrection is hollow bullshit and God dwells in the gathering of 2 or more half-alive limbs held in the genderless straitjacket of silence. So heaven is an operating theater, runway, padded room, pulpit, cockpit, publishing house, a voice that speaks for me but is not mine. Ooh, I like that one.
Good go.
Yeah, yeah, I like that one. That one goes.
Mm.
That one goes. I love being Black. Being Black is one of my favorite things about me. And I, uh, I wouldn't trade that for anything, and I wouldn't trade that the community of Blackness for anything. And so, I have two poems that I will read for Black people, generally for specific Black people and for Black people broadly. But this one is for Black people broadly. It is called Parable of the Tenant Farmers, and it has an epigraph as well. That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to perform the miracles of one only thing, Hermes Trismegistus. If heaven really is a gated retirement community, the homies and I will spend the next life unionizing the angels. Since a gate is just a wall imbued with discernment authority, not one halo will glow until demands are met. Reasonable triage shift links for gate personnel, a system of reporting for incidents with belligerent souls, comprehensive health insurance, including dental, vision, mental, and wing care, a path from part-time to full-time angel. Divine choirs will echo in every room of the landlord's house. We have nothing to lose but our chains. If heaven really is a high-rise apartment building, the clique and I will declare all the units community property. Should salvation require a credit check or rename itself inheritance, all current terms of damnation will be subject to renegotiation. Though God's image is many, his privilege is few, so if paradise is as private as the Durst's Manhattan, give me and my kinfolk eternal rest in the baseline. Cover us with handfuls of dirt and a mouthful of Hennessy. Leave this flesh to stage die-ins among earthworms. Let niggas go on believing we gonna be all right in the end. Big love to the niggas. I should just say that. To the niggas. There is a poem in here for you. I won't read it, but there is a poem in here for the niggas. So love to you. Love to you. This is the second part of the erasure poem, All the Other Planets, Probe 2, an elegy for my sister, Brandy. Mercury. Aries season bursts through skin with blood under its tongue. My Libra appears in the mirror before my barstool bones rise for the day. Waits until after I brush my teeth to ask why everyone blames us. For everything. Disappears in an eclipse when I pretend not to hear her. I spend the morning meditating naked with an EDM heartbeat to convince her. Venus. A boy who thinks me a wand to his cane gores my Libra with his horns. He says my name. He means it like a prayer when he leaves me alone in my bedroom. He says he hopes we can move forward stronger than ever. My Libra tries to remember the last time she waned without waxing and cannot. We drink a whole bottle of wine and laugh at how the night sky has no idea, how we won't be anywhere he can think to find us at all. Mars. A voice orders Guinness at light speed within earshot of my Scorpio. When none of her rumble progrades in this stranger's rasp, my Scorpio remembers the year and astral projects. This time, there are no teardrop comets, no sound of stardust retrograding out of flesh. We ask for 2 fingers of Jim Beam and smile at how the thing which quells our darkness has a name that ends in light. Jupiter. My Sagittarius rouses my body in a panic because A, we missed our alarms and now we have 20 minutes to get to class. B, Pluto is not a planet anymore. No one seems to give a shit but me. C, my sister is not alive anymore. No one seems to give a shit but me. D, today was our Sabbath. Saturn. My mother pretends she cannot see the asteroids redacted left my Pisces to swim through. My therapist recommends that I start bookmarking my triggers. I forget to bookmark drunkenly sending redacted flowers. I honestly don't know what I would call that constellation anyway. My father calls to say that my sister is not alive anymore. No one seems to give a shit but us. Uraners. My Capricorn and I don't remember my sister's face anymore. Even the image we see is that of the sun 8 minutes ago. We have no idea how the stars decide which triggers we will remember long enough to bookmark at all. Neptune. My Capricorn and I mix gasoline and frozen orange juice concentrate in a plastic tub. When nothing happens, Rex in effect reminds me that I am the same decaying organic matter. I become a gas giant only from a distance, take up all the space I can right here. We have prograde to retrograde to. There is no space for inertia at all. Dirty magic. I have not visited my sister since she became a fixed point, at the mercy of prepositions, a life on the fulcrum of perpetual past. On the highway to someone else's homegoing, offering half-true tales about another ghost, will I ever make it to the stone altar she now calls home? The season my sister slipped her skin, my father stopped saying her name, buried the incantation as if to keep the sun off a fragile ancient faith. I have started seeing road signs for dirty magic since I began approaching her age. The way trees thin themselves between us has me praying God stays gone till spring. All the Other Planets, Probe 3, an elegy for retrograde and my sister Brandy. Mercury. Aries season bursts through skin with blood under its tongue. I bookmark it, try not to look away, 22. My Libra appears in the mirror before my barstool bones rise for the day. Waits until after I brush my teeth to ask why everyone blames us. For everything, from prograde to retrograde to inertia. Disappears in an eclipse when I pretend not to hear her. I spend the morning meditating naked with an EDM heartbeat to convince her this is honest living. Venus. A boy who thinks me Awante's Cain gores my Libra with his horns. I bookmark it. Rapist asks victim for second date. 18. He says my name. He means it like a prayer when he leaves me alone in my bedroom. Says he hopes we can move forward stronger than ever. My able horoscope reads like possession. My Libra tries to remember the last time she waned without waxing and cannot. Deletes his number, stays friends on Facebook, lets our black hole expand slowly. We drink a whole bottle of wine and laugh at how the night sky has no idea we're in prograde and retrograde at the same time. How we won't be anywhere he can think of to find us at all. Mars. A voice orders Guinness at light speed within earshot of my Scorpio. I bookmark it. Ghost caught on camera at bar, 21. When none of her rumble progrades in this stranger's rasp, my Scorpio remembers the year and astral projects. Levitates without leaving. This time, there are no teardrop comets, no sound of stardust retrograding out of flesh. This time, we break, no barstool bones. We ask for 2 fingers of Jim Beam and smile at how the thing which quells our darkness has a name that ends in light. Jupiter. My Sagittarius rouses my body in a panic because A, we missed our alarms and now we have 20 minutes to get to class. I bookmark it Tuesdays with no goddamn caffeine, 20. B, Pluto is not a planet anymore. No one seems to give a shit but me. C, my sister is not alive anymore. No one seems to give a shit but me. D, today was our Sabbath. We used to stain our lips with coffee grounds and silent supplication, Saturn. My mother pretends she cannot see the asteroids redacted left my Pisces to swim through. Like my rings are not retrograding in all the pictures. My therapist recommends that I start bookmarking my triggers. My browser immediately gains 13 shortcuts to the Big Bang. I forget to bookmark drunkenly sending redacted flowers. I honestly don't know what I would call that constellation anyway. My father calls to say that my sister is not alive anymore. No one seems to give a shit but us. Uranus. My Capricorn and I don't remember my sister's face anymore. When the sun sets on Earth, it does not disappear from the sky. Even the image we see is that of the sun 8 minutes ago. I bookmark them both, things that live only in retrograde, 21. We have no idea how the stars decide which triggers we will remember long enough to bookmark at all. Laughter progrades out, and for a moment we are both featureless infinity, Neptune. My Capricorn and I mix gasoline and frozen orange juice concentrate in a plastic tub. I bookmark it. Death did not find us, 23. When nothing happens, Rex in effect reminds me that I am the same decaying organic matter as everything else. I become a gas giant only from a distance. Take up all the space I can right here. Remember that a name has never been a title, that none of us are God enough to survive. We have prograde to retrograde too. There is no space for inertia at all.
Buddy.
Just two more, y'all. Just two more, I promise. This one is for my Earth sisters. I have been so fortunate that in leaving me, my sister has sent me some replacements, some precious ones that have done her job in her stead, even though she was not able to be with me. I'm so fortunate. I believe they're all here. They might be all here, but if they are not all here, Maya, Asia Bryant Wilkerson, Ashley Hayes, who has an epigraph in this book, all three of them have kept me here, have made this book possible, and have allowed me to see a future in which I exist alongside this book instead of this book existing without me. So I have to really give a lot of love and a lot of credit to those folks. So this is for y'all. Parable of the Hidden Treasure, an aubade for those who are always rising. On the days my sister's memory is an atrophied muscle, a sax player resurrects the darkest light sample. Husks, show me what you got, becomes the pot howling hymns at the kettle on the queue to Church Avenue. Family honey roast niggas over woolen plats in a black girl's kitchen. Stove hot, tongues sorrel sour. Kanekelon viands to emaciated hearts. Meta passes through dat meditation, and none of us are tender-headed here. On the days my sister's empathy hangs thick, crab boil steam clouds Ashley's windows. Asia laughs under trees in a Prospect Park sun shower, superb and inevitable. Fire envelops the tip of a blunt rolled with lavender, the grandest branching only complemented by heat. We two step across the floor in Maya's living room, transformed in overripe melody, a trap motet with masked strings, movement one. I forgive her for singing to me in voices not her own. Thank her for the music anyway. On the days my sister's rings are trophies from a living made by hunting. Commerce at an end. The green line sinking into the ocean, movement two. I forgive myself for marking the change in her tale's narrator. Thank her for lingering to listen anyway. I love you, buddy.
I love you too.
Forever, forever. Forever, forever. Sorry, I gotta do my time check. I gotta do my time check. And I do have time. Amaze balls. Don't y'all love a Virgo? I love it too.
I was just too immersed in your poems to check the time for you.
It's okay. Don't worry. I know you were immersed. I was not. I certainly was feeling it. So this last one is the last poem in the book. We will end at the end. This is the last poem in the book. It is a series of Aintu poems, which is essentially another new Black American poetry form. There are, 7 lines? Yes, there are 7 lines, and they ascend and then descend. So 2 syllables in the first line, 4 syllables in the second, 6 in the third, 8, then they go back down again. They are, I call it an Aintu bracelet because they are connected by the first and the last word. So we will end with this one, and then we'll jump into discussion if you're cool with that, bud.
Very much.
Boisterous, an Aintu bracelet. The world is not a phantom. It is an assemblage of families. Archbishop Francois Fenelon. Body, ossuary, vessel for the next faith, a totally new unity, keeper of the bloodline, holy sundial, bear fruit, hybrid sweetness for the watching saplings, birth a name ripe with ritual, sticky with rebellion, rambunctious pulp, alive, weathered amber suspends laughter in leaves, branches whine and whisper pigeon, grace a staple in dance, morsel to the hungry. Hungry should not exist if kinfolk have kitchens. When food is scarce, we eat the mud, bury the love inside, then wait for it to bloom. To bloom, release the salt, sift out sting from soil, then water it with tempest wind. Forgiveness lets acid bathe the new fronds again. Thunder crashes into the canopy. Lightning makes a meal of the bark. Shed it all. Grow it back. We are more than body. Thank y'all so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Oh my goodness.
Buddy,
Buddy.
I know.
You're so good.
Crazy.
You're so good.
Crazy.
And the first question I have about your really good collection.
Oh, so nice.
Oh my God.
Look at her.
We were both brought up in spoken word. Spoken word is a very Black art. And I love the poems in Black forms in this collection that are in alignment with that lineage, such as the Kwansabas, your final poem, the Into bracelet. What supported you in engaging in form in a way that didn't feel forced or didn't lean into a white gaze of what form is supposed to be?
Another great question. I felt really locked out of a lot of form poetry initially when I encountered it. I think I want to free everyone in the room by saying, like, no one thinks in rhyme. Like,
Right.
no one thinks in pentameter. Like, that's not how people think. If you're, well, I wouldn't say most English speakers maybe speak in pentameter, but they don't necessarily think that way. And so, as someone who was trying to find myself in all of these other forms, I was really struggling because it felt like I was having to put on another voice in order to engage with the poem. And what I found in engaging, well, the reason I went looking for Black poetry forms was because I was like, anytime I feel uncomfortable in real life, I go looking for Black people.
Yeah.
So I was like, why wouldn't the same be true for Black poetry forms? So I went looking, and I was like, there has to be something. There has to be a place where I feel more comfortable, or that I feel like I can be myself. And what I found was, not only is there a pretty significant tradition of these sort of invented forms by Black poets, but that a lot of them are like relatively contemporary, which was really exciting to me.
What excited you about it?
I think the fact that there wasn't a lot of publication that used a lot of these forms, they're not necessarily widely or broadly adapted, but the Black poets who know them. You know, it's our sort of our ritual symbol, right? It's our way of denoting each other, recognizing each other. And so, you know, I don't know a Black poet who hasn't, you know, attempted a bop, or attempted a Kwansaba, or attempted a duplex, or attempted, you know, like attempted any invented poetry form that came from a Black mind. Like, all of us are drawn to it. All of us want to try it. All of us want to try to find ourselves in it. And specifically the Kwansaba I started experimenting with in 2019, when I was just the saddest I have ever been. And these are praise poems. These are poems about joy. These are poems that are supposed to distill your joy down to its barest bones, its basest parts. And I wasn't living a life at the time that was requiring me to do that. So the black poetry practice of paring that joy down and being specific about it then led to just a more specific mental living practice of like paring down what it is that you care about, and not being willing to suffer anything else.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think being Black, like I said, is something I'm deeply proud of, and I wanted to walk in that tradition of literary Blackness, not just cultural Blackness or Blackness as a embodied experience, but I wanted to walk in the legacy of the Black literary tradition, and so those forms really allow me to do that and to feel really close to the brilliant people that created them.
It's embodied well in this body too, not just your body, this body right
here.
I'm
glad.
Oh my God.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I rock with that. It matters to me that people know or can tell that I am a Black person, or that distinctly I am a Black Southerner. Because I'm about Southern supremacy. I don't know about other people in everyone. I am a Southern supremacist. Like, I do believe, you know, people ask me all the time, like, well, are you moving, or are you leaving, or, you know, and I say, no, like, this is my home. This is where I come from. Like, I love this place. And also I love this place, and only I can talk bad about this place. You know, like, people really got to learn their place with that. You know what I mean? But yeah, it matters that my voice is uniquely Black Southern, and that Black Southerners are our own little pocket of the Black American within the Black American diaspora, it has small diasporas. Shout out to Joy Priest for waking me up on that. But there are even diasporas of Black people within America, and so it matters to me that my voice is distinctly regionally Southern.
Absolutely.
So that Black poetry forms also helped me find that too, of like what about me distinguishes me from maybe someone who is writing in Boston, or someone who's writing in Chicago, or someone who's writing in LA.
Right. You got to touch on this a little bit, but I want to ask a question so that you can talk more deliberately about it. So therapy is therapy. Poetry is not therapy. I will say this again. Therapy is therapy. Poetry is not therapy. At the same time, it's clear how much these poems were helpful in your nonlinear healing journey around grief and mental health and suicidality, sexual violence. As much as you're comfortable, can you talk about a poem or more than one poem or any particular thematic elements of the book that has really reminded you of your aliveness in the body and the spirit that you occupy?
My aliveness, an exceptional question. I can go back to the process of actually writing All the Other Planets, because I think that really illuminated it well for me. Sure. I struggled with that poem for a long time because I hadn't really written the big grief poem. And I had written, poets, we hide from ourselves in other work, right? We hide what it is we're actually trying to talk about in smaller iterations, drafts, throwaways, things. And I realized that I had been writing about not wanting to live anymore, and I hadn't been writing about why. And I needed to sort of name explicitly what it was that was pushing me out of my life. And at the time, I still am what I would consider an astrology queer, but I was much more an astrology queer then. And so I went to my birth chart, and I was like looking through my birth chart, because I do know the time that I was born. Shout out to my mother again for that. I do know the time that I was born. So I was doing all the math. I was like doing all of the research and trying to figure out, like, is there something in me that is repelling life? Like, is it inherent to me, or is it things that have happened? And the closer I got to examining that, A, the longer the poem got, and B, the more it became apparent that it was actually a poem that was trying to tell on itself over and over and over again. That there are lines in that poem that get really close to saying the thing, and then we pull off, and then we move to somewhere else. And
does the erasure aspect of it, like, yes.
And this is really where the erasure came in, was that I was so frustrated with it, and I was like, it needs something. It's not finished. It needs something. And at this time, remember, it's one poem, so it's just the one the last one that I read. It's just a big long poem. And I was like, I think it was actually Elias Evander. I have to give credit to Elias Evander for this, because she has some incredible erasure poems that she has done. And I was talking to her at FEMS in Boston and trying to crack this poem, and then the light bulb went off. I said, oh, it needs to erase itself, or it needs to be an erasure of itself, and it needs to reveal itself over time, because that really is what happened with my grief. Is that the longer I talked about it, the closer I got to it. It really felt like coming out of the woods. It really felt like the experience of what the poem is in the book now, of starting with just a fully erased poem, starting with all of these bits and pieces, but just knowing the effect, like knowing the effect is emptiness. And then, sort of moving as you move through the probes, learning more and more about why it is that you feel this way, why you don't want to be here anymore. And then you get to the end and you're like, oh, it's all of it. like actually there's so many layers other than just your sister not being here, or just being assaulted. Like there are so many other layers to it, and they all inform each other. And that to me felt more in line with the nature of grief, with the nature of that, is that you sort of come to deeper understanding the longer you sit with it, but it really does feel like that coming out of the dark. For sure.
That's so beautiful.
So yeah, thanks, bud.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not only do you talk about the planets and grief, I love the way you talk about heaven and how you display a very restrictive form of heaven in this collection. So I have so many questions for you, but I'll try to keep it concise in this regard. Like, how is it for you navigating grief when it comes to a very colonized heaven versus what heaven ought to be, or at least ought to be for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. It is hard for me to imagine a heaven that my sister is not in. And I would never put my sister in a heaven that replicated this world that she left, particularly under the circumstances that she left. And so it is impossible for me to square the idea that, like, if there is a heaven, my sister is in it with, like, but heaven looks like, Decatur. like, no, like, I don't think so. I think,
Right.
but I think that the power was really important to me, as I said in the beginning, to, like, give real language to what heaven is.
Yeah.
If not, the typical understanding, what does that mean for me? And heaven means, like, sitting in a black girl's kitchen getting my braids taken out. Like, heaven means going to the barber shop and listening to my barber tell me about everything, because your barber gonna tell you about everything. Everything. But I mean, like, that for me is more along the lines of what I would understand a heaven to be. Heaven is black, heaven is queer, heaven looks like me.
Yes.
And if it really don't look like that, no shade, I don't want to be there.
Right.
So I think that was so instrumental.
You can be a little shady.
Like, I mean, no shade. I think it also is really important because a lot of people don't know this, but I wrote this book, like, during, like, a time in my life. A lot of these poems were written when I was, like, actively suicidal. And so a lot of these poems were written at a time where I'm writing about heaven as, like, a real place, not an abstract understanding, something that's coming eventually for me. Like, I am imagining, if I cross the threshold tomorrow, what is the heaven that I walk into?
Yeah.
What do I want? Who do I want to be there? And, like, when you get practical about things like that, when you get practical about saying to yourself, like, this is a collection that I intended to come out posthumously. What does that mean? Right? This is what I mean when I say I'm living in an impossible reality, right? Of being here alongside this book.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about heaven both in the theoretical sense and the sort of ideological sense, but also as in a very real destination, like a very real place of reprieve, of relief, of rest, and of quiet. I frequently talk about that with my partner and with other people who know me, that, like, my brain is very loud, and living is very loud. And sometimes you just want a moment of quiet to feel in your body without the sort of competing stimuli. So heaven for me when I was writing these poems was close at hand. And that's why I felt like I needed to be intentional about how I talked about it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Part of that loudness makes me think a lot about how monstrosity is depicted in both of your collections. Could you compare and contrast your reckoning with monstrosity in this debut versus your chapbook Monster House?
I think Monster House was much more documentary in terms of the perspective that I took on what I considered to be monstrosity, or what I considered to be moments that ordinary people became monsters of themselves. And what I realized
you did, like, a video project before Monster
I
House
did,
came out too. Yeah.
I did. And similar themes explored there too.
Yep.
But I think what was illuminated for me throughout this project is that monstrosity, or what we understand to be monstrosity, is usually a projection of our inner turmoil. And sometimes we are we don't really even see that people are just living.
Right.
Like that
No, absolutely.
and you know, there is that like American Horror Story, all monsters are human type of thing, and I do agree with that to an extent. But I think that all monstrosity is a matter of perspective. Um, and that is why I feel so connected to things like Frankenstein's monster, things, you know, things that really were never supposed to be here, but now are, because of an accident of circumstances, are sort of here. And I definitely, particularly the Frankenstein's monster analogy, like felt really close to how I was living at the time, just feeling dropped in my life, feeling like I wasn't supposed to be around. And isn't that monstrous? Right? Isn't that a monstrous way to move through the world, to be so shocked and surprised every day that you wake up, and every you know, and that there is still light every time you wake up, and someone is asking for something every time you wake up, you know, like so that was for me how an exploration of the mundane nature of monstrosity, and how the perspective of it meant that I made a monster of myself over the course of several years, because I wasn't living like I was going to live for the rest of my life. And a lot has changed since that, but I would say that Monster House was very much a young person's perspective on monstrosity, and like young, not necessarily both in age, but also just in life. In that it was, my response to monstrosity at the time was anger, was indictment. And that was a product of my position, a product of my perspective. And now that I've lived a little bit longer, and I also like am the age that like a lot of the adults were when I was a child, like, you know, then you just have a new super it's impossible. Everybody can be a monster from a distance, but when you try to get as close as possible to their way of thinking, or try to understand them, no one stays a monster for long if that's the approach you take.
No one stays a monster for long.
Well, just keep living, buddy.
And also, Kate, can you just receive the fact that you're smart? Like,
I think. Oh, well, buddy,
you're very smart. I'm quoting you back because you're smart.
I appreciate you, friend.
I appreciate you too.
This is also the reason I asked Maya to do this, because I hate talking about myself. So I needed my best friend to be the person to like talk to me about myself. Man, when we do this.
So language in this collection is always deconstructing and expanding. Blackness, transness, and those two are not mutually exclusive by any means. Was that always a focus when working on this collection? Was the theme realized over time? Were there one or two poems that led you to make that the center of the collection? How does it help you play with the physical spaces between certain lines, especially with syntax in this piece? And yeah, talk as much about the process as you'd like.
I would say I started putting together a book in 2019, but I'd been writing for what, two-ish years, 3 years before that. And so I really wasn't sure how to write a book. I thought that you just write a ton of poems, and then you look at the poems and you say, what are these about? And then you organize them in that way, and then the book comes out. I had no concept of how I was supposed to put this book together. And so their early drafts of this book are very chaotic, very like so all over the place, so stream of consciousness. There was at one point I thought it was going to be a book length poem. Like I thought it was going to be a long poem, and that was a totally different project. Like, so, and at the same time, right, I'm also like trying to stay alive. I've also given myself a fixed point of like, well, my sister was 29, so I only have until 29. So whatever is done by 29, we'll leave it. Like, but that's really how it happened. So I was just writing in volume. I was just writing a ton. And it really wasn't until I would say like 2020 like in the pandemic sort of slamming into everything,
Yeah.
that I like looked at this and I said, I have a lot of poems here and I don't really know what I have. Like I don't, to use the slam phrase, like I don't even know what our pockets look like. Like I don't even know what we're doing. So I went back through all the work and I was like, there's so much here. Like this might be a book. Like there might be enough here to try to do it. So I start putting together very early drafts, sending it out. I had some really beautiful encouragement from some places really early on. I have to give a shout out to Terrence Hayes. He doesn't know that, he probably doesn't remember this, but he read an early version of this book and gave it a really beautiful, gave some really beautiful words of feedback. And I needed that at the time. But it was really just a matter of me taking stock and making 3 big buckets. Like, what are the poems about? Poems about being Black, the poems are about being queer, the poems about being like a God-fearing person or a spiritual person. And I was like, well, okay, let's just try to sort of balance these across sections, figure out what their recurring themes are. And the ordering was pretty solid. And then I went to France in 2022 and had a month to myself, which is not good if you're ideating on a book, because I had a month to myself. So I basically took a hammer to the table of contents and I was like, this is not right. We need more stuff. I added more poems and I took poems out. And even up until I was sending it out for the National Poetry Series, there were poems that had not been written at the time of submission that then I wrote in the time between the book getting accepted and the book coming out. So it was constantly in flux, this beautiful space. Get it?
I got it. And
that was so bad. Don't encourage that.
But listen, people need to
genuinely terrible.
People need to know about the extensive process of building a book like this, about the in and outs, and about how nonlinear of a process it is, and how, oh snap, I'm writing new poems as the book is here. That happens every time.
Oh man, it was a moment of epiphany. I'll never forget it in our apartment. My wonderful wife, beautiful wife, is also a poet, and so we do a lot of like beautiful mind exercises in our apartment, lots of very woo-woo things. And I will never forget it. I was standing in our kitchen and I was like, the book is wrong. Like it doesn't all hang together right. Like something is missing from it. And Shay and I were just like spitballing, and finally I said, my sister doesn't die in this draft of the book. Like there was no poem in which she like died, right? And I was like, I haven't written that poem yet. Now I had like signed the Penguin contract, like we were full speed ahead, like we were in it. And I was like, it's missing a poem. It's missing the poem. And the poem in which that happens is, I think, one of the shortest in the book. But I realized that there was a hole in the middle of the narrative arc, and everything else in the book was sort of happening around it in response to this thing that wasn't actually being stated or wasn't actually being offered. And I was like, well, if the intention is to create space, the intention is to name space, create a material culture for yourself, knock knock, former archaeologist, like if that's really what you're doing, then like you have to say it. And so for the first time, like since she died, I like really started that poem with like, my sister is dead, and then sort of changed the verbal experience. Like my sister dies, my sister, like kind of moved all the way through it in terms of verbal tense. And it was therapeutic and really hard. But writing that poem then made all of the other poems in the collection actually talk to each other clearly. Because they finally had the shared language. Finally they had the thing of like, this is what we've been leaning toward. Like, this is what we've been talking about. Oh, like that makes sense. Finally, we have the key to read the rest of the map and understand why things are where they are. So I really allowed my book to sort of take shape on its own. I had to live a little bit in order to write in response to the things I was living. And so I also think that's why the arc is not, I wouldn't consider it a complete arc. I would consider it a satisfying arc in that it resolves, but I wouldn't consider it complete. So,
I do have one more question for you.
You're allowed to ask me literally any question that you could think of, Maya.
Thank you.
Any question ever.
Any rappers you'd like to thank for the creation
Oh my
of
God!
this collection?
Yes! I'm so glad you asked. Well, first, I have to give the biggest shout out to No Name. There is a poem in this book that I have always, in my other life, I was a rapper, but I can't rap, so I write poems. And so my dream was to have a No Name feature on my rap album, but I can't do that, so I have a No Name feature in my book. Maybe she doesn't know that, but she does. But it's in there. I have No Name feature
does
in my
make
book.
incredible beats and is an incredible musician. And that's all I'll interject about it's your event. It's your question.
I love you, and incredible is a stretch. Incredible is such a stretch, but I love you so much. But yeah, No Name, big love to No Name. Gotta give a shout out to Eady. Gotta give a shout out to Little Sims. Oh man, basically, if you're a Black woman spitting in this game, I probably got to give you some love. Megan Thee Stallion, Mona Leo, I probably got to give you some love because I love music so much, and it is the thing that I have never really been able to do myself, but I've always just been it's a spectator's love, in the same way that, like, you watch the Kentucky Derby and you're like, oh, I wish I was a jockey, like not really, like that's not a real thing. But the kids, you're like childlike for those 5 seconds, and you're like, oh God, I wish I could do this. My childlike love of music has persisted my entire life. So I'm still, I'm the person that when I'm driving in the car, I'm still in a music video, I'm still, really, really doing it, gesturing in the rain and all of that. I'm still that person. And without the music, this book would not have been possible. Without No Name's Room 25, without Telephone, without Little Sims Drop 6, without Sometimes I Might Be Introvert, without Under 25. Like there are albums that came out while I was writing this book that made me think that I was going to be okay. And I need them to, like, wherever they are now, I want them to know that they helped to save me. So I appreciate them. Thank you, buddy. That was a great question. You know that was on my heart. Yeah. You knew that was on my heart.
I had to be sure to ask it.
Oh, I'm such a fan. Honorable mention to Jamila Woods. She is not a rapper, but Water Made Us has healed me so deeply, and all of her music has healed me so deeply. And also, she is the person who made me feel like I could experiment with music and poetry in a more intentional way. So shout out to Jamila Woods. True visionary, for sure.
Yes.
Thanks, bud. Oh my gosh. What?
Wow. If there are any folks who have questions out there, please wait for the microphone to come to you.
We got a couple online questions. So we got a great online
question.
audience full of a lot of poets.
Oh my god.
Thank you for making it accessible for online folks.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Hi, poets.
You had shouted out Joy Priest. Joy Priest is in the audience. So we got a lot of good folks here. Matthew Taylor says, no lie, I have heard 3 references to ambergris in under a week. Are whales a favorite animal of yours? How often does the archaeologist hold the poet's pen?
Ooh, good question. Philip B. Williams is actually the person who told me about how much I write about nature in my work. I had no idea, if you can believe it, but Philip was the one who was like, oh, you're writing about animals all the time. Like, do you want to talk about that? I was like, totally. Yeah, because that's exactly how he said it. So he's, I will say that I only recently became aware that nature is kind of the way that I look to understand things. I look to understand the world, and natural processes for me are great analogs for human relationship and also for human processes, gentrification, colonization. I look to the natural world to understand maybe why or how those things are happening and what the effects could be. But yeah, I would say it's my awareness of it is pretty recent, but I think I do it probably. I've been doing it for a while. And this next project that I am working on, if I can tease it just a little bit, the next project I am working on does deal a lot with animals and animal behavior. So
nice. Maya asks, what's been a win, large or small, that's brought you joy in your writing journey recently?
Oh wow, that's a great question. Ooh, you know what? I'll say this. I am not somebody who, like I said, enjoys the spotlight. I would much rather celebrate someone else than celebrate myself. But for the first time since I came into the program, I read at the Randolph student reading this past, like what, 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. I read at the student reading, and that was like really a step outside my comfort zone, because Randolph is, for those of you who don't know, like, get familiar. Like, Randolph genuinely is one of the greatest MFAs in the country, in terms of faculty and in terms of the caliber of students. So you stand up in front of those people, and those are like the future in that room. So the fact that I did that and felt good about it afterward, I think was a really huge win for me, getting back comfortable in front of people, and also comfortable with this book baby, because I hadn't really spent a lot of time with her. That's hard to believe, but I hadn't really spent a lot of time with her, like actually reading it, right, instead of editing it and things. So it kind of got me back excited about the book again. So I'll say that's a win.
Love that. Adrian Novi asks, what books did you read over the course of writing and editing this book, and what books do you always emotionally carry with you in a way that has kept you holding on and makes you think?
Oh my goodness.
It's such a question she would ask. And
very
I love
much.
it.
Shout
I
out
love
to you,
it very
Adrian.
much. We love you.
Okay. I will just throw out a bunch of books. I have to shout out Professor Trisha Wilson Okamura. When I graduated from East Carolina University, she gave me The Lost Books of the Odyssey by Zachary Mason. And it is a retelling of the books of the Odyssey, but from the perspective of the secondary characters, or from the perspective of like the trees and the plants. It's like one of the best books I've ever read in my life. His second book, I think it's his second book, that also came out, Metamorphica, is a retelling of the Metamorphoses, just as beautiful. So I was reading a lot of classical myth, obviously. I was also reading a lot of Lucille Clifton, a lot of Rita Dove, spending a lot of time with Sonata Melodica by Rita Dove, a lot of time with, near the end of my process, Thomas and Beulah. Lucille Clifton, Good Woman, is usually the one I go back to. I read her memoir, like, I would say every year. I think Lucille Clifton's memoir is like something everyone should read, just to say that you've done it, even if you're not changed by it. Who else am I thinking of? Nicholas Guillen. There's also a big communist tradition of poetry that I was tapping into. So Claudia Jones, I was reading a lot of that. I was just reading a ton. James Baldwin, I got back close to, his poetry. I got back close to, and then also like Philip B. Williams. Like, I was reading a lot of Dinez. I was reading just a lot of other poets that I felt like were speaking from the same place I was speaking from, and poets that were able to write a blade on the page, and those are people that I feel like do that. So I hope that answers it, Adrian. Hearts to you.
I think it does. Thank you. Philip B. Williams will be at Charis later in the spring. Just a
Oh
quick.
my God! Yay! Come see him.
Yes.
Come see him. Tell him that I love him.
In conversation with Alexis Pauline Gumbs. So
oh my God! Come see them both.
A beautiful, beautiful night.
Incredible.
So I want to invite our folks who are physically in the room. If anybody's got one or two questions we want to ask, raise your hand. If not, we can just start partying. But if anybody's got we've had such beautiful questions. Maybe we're full. We full?
I'll be just as nice in person, I promise. I was nice to the virtual people, but I will be nice to you too.
Well, we do also sort of like to end on the idea of who's on your shelf, which is a slight variation. Like who are you, like your compatriots with your book on your shelf?
Ooh, good question. The first book that comes to mind is Dispatch by Cameron Awkward Rich. I would say it's a great book. That book is crazy. The next there's a new Cameron Awkward Rich poetry book that's like about to hit the streets, and I'm telling y'all, I'm gonna be front row for that. So Cameron Awkward Rich, I would say Dion Brand is somewhere close by. I would say June Jordan is somewhere close by. I'm thinking of like the living room. Yeah, I would. Mm, I think The Learning Tree, it's called, by Gordon Parks. His novel. Gordon Parks, incredible photographer. He has a novel that is amazing that I feel really close to. Just Above My Head, James Baldwin. Like these are ones that I feel particularly connected to off the top of my head, or I feel like my book is in conversation with. 1919 Eve Ewing, also I feel like is somewhere in that family. Yeah, I think if it's a black gender marginalized person, I would probably, I think that my book considers it a play cousin, considers it a cookout invitee. But yeah, that's a great question. I love that you all end with that. But I will definitely say, if I had to like have one book buddy that's on the side of my book, it's definitely Dispatch. Definitely Cameron's book.
Yeah.
I love that. So we are going to invite our online friends to click that teal button to buy The Space Between Men from Charis. It really does help us when you buy books from us. All of y'all can buy your books in person here tonight. You can also buy Maya's books. We are going to just give Mia a pen. They're going to stay there. So y'all can, if you already have your book, you can get it signed right now. And we'll just hang out for a bit, talk to each other, give Mia many congratulations, get to know Maya if you don't already. And let's give everybody one more round of applause.
Yay. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Love you. Oh.
Congratulations. Thank you for launching your book here with us. We appreciate you.